You're tuned in to the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Hello, Bear Down Believers, and welcome into the show. I'm Matt Reynolds. Happy bye week for Arizona football. A quarter of the way through the season, the Wildcats have a 2-1 record following last week's dispiriting 31-7 loss at Kansas State. We'll break down what Arizona needs to take moving forward from that game coming up on the show. But the big chunk of today's podcast is I'm going to rank all 9 Big 12 opponents for Arizona on physicality. And if you know football, rush offense and rush defense plays a big part of that. So I'll rank them in descending order, 9 through 1 coming up on the podcast. I'll also give my take on Mel Kiper's unique take on banning the too high safety look in the NFL, banning too high safety defense. No surprise, I disagree with that, but we'll dive into that a little bit. And later in the show, I'll make my picks for the weekend slate in college football. It's a tasty one throughout the Big 12 and throughout college football, so we'll make our picks on that. Before we get to all of our content on this show, I want to remind you to please subscribe to the show right here on YouTube if you're watching us here on my YouTube page at Matt_Reynoldson, or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, including TuneIn, that's BLEAV in Arizona, and click the play button on all of our audio files to this point. You'll be entertained if you like Arizona football, Arizona basketball, and everything U of A. All right, it's a total reset for Arizona right now, heading into week 4 of the college football season. And really for Arizona, heading into week 5, because they have a 2-week prep now for Utah, which will be, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of experts, the toughest remaining game on the Wildcats' schedule. So the big thing Arizona needs to find in this 2-week stretch is an identity, because it looked like last Friday night they did not find that. They didn't have it. And with a new coaching staff and a new team, even bringing back as much as Arizona had coming back into this year, it's easy to find an identity as a program. Arizona knows what its identity is, and that's culture. That's reflecting the Polynesian mindset of being a warrior, being family first. So the culture of the Arizona program is there, but now at this critical juncture of the season, they need the football identity. Brent Brennan had his press conference on Monday heading into the bye week and talked a little bit about how Arizona needs to find that identity in this little 2-week stretch.
No, I think we're still finding it. I think, you saw, we've had moments of really good football, in all 3 phases, and then we've had moments of not great football. And so I think the consistency piece is really what we're trying to achieve. And, that's up to me and the rest of the coaching staff to continue to kind of take advantage of this time we have this week and next week to not only prepare for a very good Utah team on the road, but to also get our own stuff tightened up.
One more soundbite before we get to the main content on this show, because my colleague Brian Peterson asked Brendan a very interesting question on Monday. Arizona had the nation's longest active winning streak snapped at 9 games. That was 7 last season and 2 for the start of this season, in sort of 2 lackluster performances against New Mexico and NAU. Obviously, that win streak got snapped in a very big way at Kansas State. But Brian asked Brent Brennan if there's maybe a weight off their shoulders a little bit, or a weight off the players' shoulders to not be carrying the expectations, not be carrying the win streak, and really just be able to focus on themselves and focus on football and focus on more of what is ahead of them instead of what's behind them with this win streak. Brennan had a pretty interesting answer on today's current climate of college football and how these players can learn to win in a new way. And instead of just capturing some of the magic that they did last year, but win in a new way and grind out every single week as the 2024 Arizona Wildcats.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely possible. I think that's hard for anyone to handle, a ton of praise or a ton of negativity, but both can be dangerous for young people, and there's nothing in, that stuff doesn't ever get shut off for them because it all comes directly to their phone. I think I've said it to y'all. I used to say it a lot in my last job. Just back in the day when we played, it might be in the newspaper, but your college friends don't read the newspaper. So they weren't going to give you a hard time about dropping a pass or missing a tackle. But now you drop a pass or miss a tackle, 10,000 people might blow you up on Twitter and say a bunch of really hard stuff to hear. And so I think that part of it, that's part of their life that they have to deal with and that we have to help them try and deal with. And I think just watching college football the last couple weeks, I think there's a lot of people dealing with managing expectations and playing to the level they're capable of playing. And for us, that we haven't had those kind of expectations coming into a season before, and so we are definitely battling that.
All right, so a hard reset for Arizona this week to get some of their guys healthy, get some of their guys ready for a very physical battle against Utah. I want to go over a couple injury updates before I do get to my list of Big 12 teams ranked by physicality, or at least list of Arizona Big 12 opponents ranked by physicality. Rhino Tapa'atotai did play, the left tackle did play in that game against Kansas State. Looks to be working his way back. Dalton Johnson, the safety, did not play in that game. And I think that was a big loss for Arizona. So hopefully he'll be kind of on the mend, be on his way back in the grand scheme of things as we progress later in this season and have kind of the 2-week prep for Utah, a 2-week prep to get the training room, get things right. The one non-injury situation is Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. Arizona's starting running back to begin the season is up in the air right now and being held out because of a potential eligibility issue with his eligibility. If you remember the weird story of his recruitment in the offseason, he committed to Arizona and then went and committed to Ole Miss. So he committed to Arizona in the first place because there was an admissions issue with his transfer from New Mexico that Texas A&M got his commitment and then basically said, hands off, we're not doing it. So he went to Arizona, later pivoted away from Arizona, committed to Ole Miss. Ole Miss found a similar admissions issue. They said, hands off, we're not doing it. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt comes back to Arizona. Great situation for all parties. Arizona compliance does their job, and Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt gets to be eligible for the season opener. What I understand happened is an opponent tipped off the NCAA that maybe not all I's were dotted and all T's were crossed on figuring out the eligibility issue for Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. So he did play in the first game. Crosky-Merritt played very well against New Mexico. And then they held him out against NAU for the precautionary standpoint of not being in a situation where they would be in hot water eligibility wise with the NCAA and potentially face a postseason ban or team wide infractions because of this one player being eligible to play. He's had a long road in college football. He's been in college for a long time. So the eligibility concern is basically, does he have any time left to play college football? Now, for the New Mexico game, because Arizona did self-report, because Arizona has been cooperative, my understanding is that the NCAA, and I've been told this by sources, my understanding is that the NCAA will not punish Arizona if Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt is ruled ineligible. The NCAA will not punish Arizona for allowing him to play in the New Mexico game. So now we've seen the NCAA go back on their word before. We've seen weird situations happen with that. So, I don't think Arizona's completely out of the woods with that and letting Bill play in the opener. But for now, from what I understand, Arizona is in the clear as far as Crosky-Merritt having played in the opener and not facing any infractions because of that, especially because Arizona has been so cooperative in this situation. But it remains in a holding pattern, and you can bet the Wildcats want a ruling on this and would love, love, love to have their starting running back for a game against a physical Utah team. That brings me to our topic of the day on the Bleav in Arizona podcast, and that's physicality. I'm going to roll through and rank all 9 Arizona Big 12 opponents on physicality because we saw the identity crisis with Arizona at Kansas State and a team that beat them up in the trenches and a team that established the running back run game and then used the quarterback run game in the second half to break them, a team that, contained Arizona's run game, that forced Arizona to play catch up, that forced the Wildcats coaching staff to question the game plan and really kind of scramble all the way throughout. That was because Kansas State has an identity of physicality. And I am not going out on a limb by saying that Kansas State is the most physical team in the Big 12. This is not an overall ranking of physicality of teams in the Big 12. This is just the teams on Arizona's schedule. And I think there are legitimate opportunities. I think, especially after the Utah game, Arizona should have a legitimate shot to win every game the rest of the regular season. And if they are 10-2, it's a heck of a season. But, it comes down to figuring out what you are, figuring out what you match up against. And Arizona needs to figure out how to match up against the physicality of a lot of these teams. So I'll rank them in descending order. That's 9 Big 12 opponents for Arizona. We'll rank them from 9 to 1 on the physicality spectrum. Number 9, Houston. Houston had a very tough start to the season with a 27-7 home loss to UNLV, in which they just got flummoxed by the Running Rebels. Now, we know that UNLV is one heck of a salty team. They went into Kansas City and beat KU in a home game this past week, in a game that KU made a bevy of mistakes. Weird situations, weird bounces, weird fumbles, everything like that. They allowed UNLV to get back in that game, and UNLV ended up winning the game at KU. So UNLV 2-0 now against Big 12 opponents. But the first one was a real eye-opener in the season opener, with Houston falling by 20 at home to UNLV. Now, they did do a little bit better the following week, putting a little bit of sweat into a top 15 Oklahoma team, flummoxing that offense a little bit. But more of that was on just kind of confusing Jackson Arnold on the back end, Oklahoma not being able to push the ball downfield a whole bunch and everything like that. I didn't think it had a whole bunch to do with Houston's physicality. And then an easy win against Rice, 33-7. Defense looked a little bit better, but that UNLV loss still sticks out to me. I don't think Houston's a very good team right now. I don't think Houston's a physical outfit. So I would rank them as the number 9 team physicality-wise at Arizona will play this year. And just for reference, currently in Big 12 rankings, they are 13th in rushing offense and 7th in rushing defense. That's not the end-all, be-all for these physicality rankings. It's just a guide as we move through. Number 8 team on this list, it's Texas Tech. Texas Tech is not a team that's ever really been known for being a physical outfit. They are run and gun and beat you and throw the ball over the top of your head and everything like that. Joey McGuire has created maybe a little bit more of a physical nature to this program, but they're still the running Rebs of Texas Tech, the Red Raiders of Texas Tech, not the running Rebs. That's UNLV, but they're still the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. They run and gun. They're true cowboys out there in West Texas, so they know what they are. They have leaned into their identity as a program. They run and they go, but they are not a physical outfit. But what they can do is they can run past you, and we saw that this past week, putting up 52 points in the first half against North Texas. They'll face ASU this weekend, so that'll be an interesting test at home in Lubbock for the Red Raiders to see exactly how they match up on the lines of scrimmage. But that 52 points in the first half against North Texas, that was pretty darn impressive from Tech, so we'll see how they progress throughout the season. Currently, their Big 12 rankings are 8th in rush offense, 15th in rush defense. That rush defense is really a concerning mark as, Texas Tech goes through the season, second to last in the Big 12, and so I think you see a team that needs to maybe figure out a little bit more of an identity in the trenches to be able to be competitive down the stretch in these Big 12 games. But as of right now, I have Texas Tech as the 8th most physical opponent on Arizona's remaining Big 12 schedule. Number 7, TCU. This is a surprising one to me because Sonny Dykes, in the year that TCU went to the national championship, had a very physical outfit and actually ended up beating Michigan in a college football playoff semifinal. Look, I know Michigan has the identity of the grounded pound, the tough run defense, and everything like that. And I know a lot of weird, fluky stuff happened in that game, but you don't beat a team like Michigan unless you're willing to match up in the trenches. The stats, I think, are the most concerning for me so far this season about TCU, despite the undefeated record, because TCU has the 14th ranked rushing offense and the 12th ranked rushing defense in the Big 12. Do I think that'll improve? Yeah, I do, but there's nothing that has shown me so far that TCU will be anything more than a middle of the pack team physicality-wise in the Big 12 with these statistical rankings so far. I think the Horned Frogs are talented. I think they've got athletes. I think they're going to be a very tough out in Fort Worth for Arizona very late in the season, the second to last game of the regular season. But I think this TCU team needs to prove that they can run the ball and stop the run instead of just relying on the perimeter game. And therefore, I say TCU is the seventh most physical opponent that Arizona will face in the Big 12 conference season. Number 6 might surprise you that it's this high, and that it's higher than the other 3 on this list, but Colorado. I find Colorado to be maybe a little bit more physical outfit than last year. I think, especially defensively, what they have shown through 3 weeks, really what they've shown through the last 10 quarters of football between the second half against North Dakota, North Dakota State, in which they really kind of shut down the Bison defensively. The second half against Nebraska was a little bit of a weird situation, but granted, there wasn't a ton of offensive fireworks in that football game. Nebraska went up 14-0 on a pick six. Shedeur Sanders making a poor decision on that ball that led to kind of Nebraska running away with the game. But there wasn't a whole bunch of ball movement. I like what they have in the linebacking core and on the front line of that defense. I think they've got pass rushers. The pit transfer Hayes is a guy that can get after the quarterback. So I think there's maybe a little bit more of a physical nature to this Colorado team than we saw last year. By no means a formidable physical outfit, but I think the offensive line's coming together a little bit with the 5-star left tackle Seaton and, kind of all their transfers they brought together on the offensive line. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a strong running team ever because I don't think it wants to be. But I think defensively, it's kind of carrying the water. And that showed last week in a win over Colorado State, in which they held the Rams to single digits. So I have Colorado as my 6th ranked team, physicality wise, in the Big 12. They have the 16th ranked rushing offense because they have no commitment to running the ball. But I think they've kind of started to figure out the quick game a little bit. And I think on the perimeter, some of these star wide receivers have shown the ability and shown the willingness to be perimeter blockers. And I think if they continue that, it will alleviate some of their lack of commitment to the run game and will make Colorado a more physical outfit. So I have Colorado as the 6th most physical team that Arizona will face on this Big 12 schedule. Number 5, BYU. BYU is not going to be one of the top echelon Big 12 teams, but I think that they are an outfit that knows what they are. I think they know what they are as a program, and I think it's indicated by the 4th ranked rushing defense in the conference. Now, they're only 10th overall in the Big 12 as far as rushing offense, but that run defense, especially when you get down the stretch of the season and you have teams like Oklahoma State and Utah and Kansas State leaning on you in the run game. If you have a strong rush defense, that's something that can vault you into games that are competitive in the fourth quarter. And I think that's where BYU wants to be this year. This was not a team that really had legitimate conference title aspirations, but I think being competitive in the fourth quarter helps you win a lot of games, could help BYU progress towards bowl eligibility. And I think that run defense could be the thing that keeps them in a lot of games. Currently the 4th ranked run defense in the Big 12 conference. As I said, 10th ranked rushing offense. But you know what? I like, even though I like Arizona's run defense and run offense maybe a touch more than BYU's, Arizona's below them in a lot of ranks. So there's some legitimate concern about that, but I think BYU can really rely on that run defense to put themselves and keep themselves in competitive games in the fourth quarter. That's why I have BYU as the 5th most challenging physical matchup for Arizona on the Big 12 conference schedule. Number 4, West Virginia. And these numbers are skewed a little bit because they were a bit exposed by a more physically talented and physically daunting team in week 1 against Penn State at home. I really do think as well, I mean, if you watched that game, you saw a lengthy weather delay in Morgantown. Penn State was still going to win that game. They were still in control of that game, but there wasn't a whole lot that Penn State was doing in the run game. It was a lot more plays from Drew Aller, the quarterback for Penn State, than we've seen in a long time. So West Virginia looks like it can match up in the trenches against a lot of teams. It looks like it'll be a salty defensive outfit. Looks like, they have big players. Garrett Green is a strong quarterback, is a strong player. And I really think that this West Virginia team has sort of a mentality based on the identity of the program and based on the turnaround that Neil Brown led last year to really be, a physical outfit and be a team that can be competitive in this Big 12 conference. You're not doing it unless you're physical. And West Virginia is going to face a lot of tough opponents this year, going to face a lot of tough outs. I don't put too much stock into the Penn State game because I knew coming into that game, and I think anybody reasonably knew coming into that game, that Penn State was the better looking team, was the better looking program. And they proved that on the field in that game. And it was a handy win for Penn State in Morgantown. But I also think that West Virginia has proven the last couple of weeks that it's ready for stepping up to the plate and for being a physical program. And that's why I have West Virginia as the fourth most physical team left on Arizona's schedule. Currently sixth in the conference in rushing offense, eighth in rushing defense. The top three. Here we go. The top three most physical opponents in the Big 12 for Arizona. And number three might surprise you just because of their statistical rank. UCF is leading the conference by a wide margin in rushing offense and leading the conference by a wide margin in rushing defense. Let's take a look at some of these stats. It's pretty insane, honestly. UCF is only allowing 64 rushing yards per game, and they are running the ball for a whopping 375 yards per game. Now, a lot of that has to do with KJ Jefferson, the outstanding mobile quarterback for the Knights. But I think that a lot of that also has to do with the mindset of their head coach. Gus Malzahn knows what he is as a head coach, knows exactly where he wants his program to be. He's coached in the SEC. His team played for a national championship game. He knows that running the ball and stopping the run is going to be paramount to winning games in any conference, in any league. I think UCF's really good. I think UCF is really good. I think UCF is really scary. I don't think UCF has really played that formidable of an opponent yet. Let's take a look at their schedule. New Hampshire, Houston, and TCU. And that TCU game was an absolute dogfight down the stretch. We'll take a look at some of the stats in this to just kind of illustrate, what we got going here. UCF's running back RJ Harvey running for 180 yards in that game. KJ Jefferson also a major factor in that game. But the only reason, even with the statistics, that I don't have UCF higher on this list from a physicality standpoint is because they haven't really faced anybody that is committed to running the football. I think 34 points against TCU, and especially going down early, going down 21-7 in the first half against TCU, is a little indicator as to there are cracks in the foundation of maybe the line play, maybe the physicality, maybe the overall just soundness of this UCF football team. Look, they've won a couple games by blowout. The statistics are going to be a little bit skewed. And I think that, Jefferson obviously is a big quarterback, one of the best players in the conference, going to be tough to bring down. But physicality is a mindset. And when you think of UCF, do you think of physicality? No, you think of speed. You think of speed, whether it's with Malzahn, whether it's with Josh Heupel, their former coach, whether it's with Scott Frost, who kind of led this turnaround, led them to the 12-0 season in the fake national championship when they beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl. So this is a team that can be physical, that can prove they can be physical, obviously have the statistics to back it up. But currently, right now, I don't think they rise to the level of these top two teams in the physicality metrics so far in this college football season. My number two team, physicality-wise, the number two most physical team that Arizona will face the rest of the season, this may surprise you if you're a U of A fan, it's Arizona State. ASU looks like a team that's going to hit you in the mouth. Cam Skattebo is a running back that is going to be he's going to be a guy that's going to pack a heavy punch. Arizona State is better on the offensive line. They've gotten better players on the defensive line. They are a team that is so focused and so dead set on creating a mentality of hitting you in the mouth. And I think that goes back to the mentality of their head coach, Kenny Dillingham, the youngest head coach in college football. They are establishing what they want to be as a program, and so far it's working. I mean, it's the first 3-0 start in quite a while for ASU. Say what you want about the competition, that Mississippi State win is no joke. Now, I don't think Mississippi State is going to be anything good in the SEC this year, but Mississippi State dared ASU to run the football, and ASU ran the football against an SEC outfit, against against a program that has put offensive and defensive linemen in the National Football League year in and year out, and ASU just pounded them on the ground. Scattaboo was great in that game. Texas State tried to take some of that away. ASU was in a bit of a dogfight in the second half down there in San Marcos and ended up pulling it out. I think the mindset and the emphasis on physicality is what really, really vaults ASU in this discussion. And the stats are backing it up so far. They have the fourth ranked rushing offense in the Big 12 and the second ranked rushing defense in the Big 12. And I think ASU is really on the rise as far as being a team that they may not beat you every week. They may not have the talent to beat you every week. They may not have the overall team to beat you every week, but you're going to feel it on Sunday after you play ASU. And I think that's what Kenny Dillingham wants to establish with this Sun Devils program. They're going to be a tough out late in the season, but I think Arizona still has more talent. I think that's a big factor in this discussion, but you're going to feel it on that Sunday after Thanksgiving weekend if you're U of A. And I think ASU is on a strong trajectory when it comes to that, because that creates an identity for their program and certainly reflecting the mentality of their head coach. The number one most physical team that Arizona will face the rest of the season is no surprise, even if the stats don't back it up so far: Utah. Utah has proven year over year over year to be that team, to be a team committed to running the football, to be a team committed to stopping the run. I love what they have in the front seven. They're a team that's going to hit you in the mouth. I think that this weekend, and we'll go through it a little bit more in my picks coming up later on the show, but I think when you talk about this Utah outfit, their strengths are going to really, really frustrate a team like Oklahoma State. And a team like Oklahoma State is a very physical outfit in and of itself. Great offensive line, obviously one of the best running backs in college football in Ollie Gordon. But this is a Utah team that has been known for physicality the entire time under Kyle Whittingham. And the progression that they have had from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 to now the Big 12, and establishing themselves as a formidable out, as a tough team, as a team that will grind you down, that will run the clock, that will play tough defense. Physicality is the nature of the Utah Utes program. And even though the stats don't back it up so far, only 7th in the conference in rushing offense so far, 5th in rushing defense, even though the stats may not underscore it, Utah has that identity as a program. Currently, I think they're the second most physical team in the Big 12 behind Kansas State. And if Arizona is going to flip this season, to flip the script after a very, very rough week 3 loss to Kansas State, it's got to know that it's got to go in there to Salt Lake City and put the chin strap on, buckle in, and get ready for a 60-minute, 4-quarter fight against a team that just loves to be in the trenches, against a team that just loves to get into those 12-round boxing matches, those rock fights. And Arizona needs to match that physicality, needs to match that mentality in Salt Lake City if it's going to come away from Utah with a win. All right, before we get to my picks for week 4 of the college football season, I wanted to discuss what's become a hot button issue on social media throughout the day and really throughout the week when it comes to mostly the NFL, but it also has its impacts on college football, as everything that trickles down from the National Football League does. And that's Mel Kiper this morning saying that too high safeties should be outlawed in the NFL because there aren't enough big plays. All right, so I have thoughts on this, but first I want to explain what the too high safety look is. That is when you put 2 deep safeties in the coverage, in kind of that zone coverage to force the quarterback to throw it underneath. It's really a numbers game. It's really playing the zone game and putting your corners in a situation where they can, if they get beat, pass it off to the safeties in a zone and force the quarterback to take a chance, force the quarterback to throw it into a window that sometimes is maybe a lower percentage throw for the quarterback. Leads to more turnovers, leads to more interceptions. And so Mel Kiper's assertion is that too high safeties should be outlawed. The safeties should have to be within a certain distance of the line of scrimmage, and so they can't just play, that center field position back there, everything like that. He's saying it should be outlawed because quarterbacks are too reliant on the check down right now, and their coaches are emphasizing the fact that, or emphasizing the idea that they should continue to check the ball down, when it comes to, the normal flow of the offense. There's one fix for that. If you don't like teams playing too high safeties, what do you call it when two safeties play within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage? Most people in college football call that a loaded box. You load the box to stop the run. If NFL teams and college football teams, for that matter, could run the ball a little bit better, could run the ball between the tackles, could road grade you with their offensive linemen, it wouldn't be a situation. It wouldn't be a conversation, because then these teams would be able to run it for 4, 5, 6 yards a pop on first down, stay ahead of schedule, and just continue to chunk you down the field, continue to suck you in as a defense, and then take their deep shots when it makes sense. The only reason too high safety is really causing these young quarterbacks to struggle right now in the National Football League and in other places in college football as well is because teams can't run the football. And they're not throwing it over the middle of the field because they don't want to put their quarterback's psyche, their stats, everything like that in danger. So they're checking it down to the outside, 4 or 5 yards a pop, which is why you can see Bo Nix and Caleb Williams have 20 completion performances for less than 100 yards. Yeah, look, I hate the check down game as much as anybody else does, but you're not going to legislate that out by banning too high safeties. This goes back to the Tampa 2 days of, Tony Dungy establishing that incredible, the defensive philosophy that permeated generations of defensive coordinators and generations of college football players as well. And Tampa 2 and cover 2, those are two defensive philosophies that have woven themselves into the fabric of the game. You're not going to legislate that out. So, and the bigger part of this is, for me, I think the overall big picture part of this is that we have done so much legislating the defense out of the game. Why do one more thing that legislates the defense out of the game? They're already playing in a league, playing in a situation where you can't hit a receiver too hard coming over the middle, where you can't hit a quarterback really at all. You can't bring him to the ground. You can't touch receivers on their routes. You can't impede the progress. You can't do this. You can't do that. It is harder than it ever has been to play defensive football, whether it's National Football League or college football. So why do one more thing that limits defenses and these brilliant defensive coordinators at these top two levels of the game that we see? It's not fair to the game. It's not fair to the fans. It's not fair to the traditionalists that are loving the spirit of defensive football. So if you want to combat it on the offensive end, learn how to run the football through the darn A gap. Run it at the inside linebackers. Force those safeties to suck in. And then once we get a true balance of the game, once the balance of the game comes back and the true road grader offensive linemen come back with their mentality, only then will we truly be back in a situation where deep shots are truly deep shots again, where NFL players can, NFL quarterbacks can take their shots because they've sucked the defense in with play action. No more straight drop back bombs. Yeah, I know that annoys some people. Bombs are a big part of the game and, one of the most exciting plays. Who doesn't love to see Tyreek Hill running for an 80-yard touchdown? But the best part of big plays traditionally was the fact that they were set up by incredible balance in the game. And, the thing that I agree with Mel Kiper on is checking the ball down in the quick game and the quick passing game is not balance. But the way you combat this, instead of legislating out too high safeties, offenses need to do their job and run the football to keep the defense honest and to keep the integrity in the game. All right, that's my little rant on the schematics of football, a game that I didn't ever play for very long, but I've studied at a pretty high level and just enjoy talking ball. Always love talking ball. If you have comments on the too high safety look and the legislation in that, and Mel Kiper's take on that, and some of the other takes that have come out today, leave a note in the comments on my YouTube page right here at Matt_Reynoldson. All right, it's time for my favorite part of the week here on the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Let's go through the picks, and it starts in the Big 12, 11 a.m. on Saturday. Houston and Cincinnati. This is really an interesting one because I have not been inspired by either of these teams so far. Obviously, Houston playing a little bit better after that week 1 dud against UNLV at home. Played pretty well on the road at Oklahoma. Sound win at home against Rice. Now they go to Cincinnati. Cincinnati, a 3.5-point favorite in this game. The total is 47.5. I like Cincinnati in this game. I think if you do like Cincinnati in this game and you have a strong conviction about it, that 3.5 seems like a safe play. Doesn't feel like this is going to be a go either way field goal game. But I think I would really think for a betting standpoint to sprinkle that under 47.5. I don't think either of these offenses have shown a whole lot of firepower so far early in the year. I think it could be a slugfest, especially early in the day in Cincinnati. That's a noon Eastern time kick. Houston obviously coming from Central time and flying out to Cincinnati. It's about off the top of my head, 2-hour flight, maybe 2.5-hour flight. So not by any means an exorbitant travel trip, but Houston is going to be hitting the road for an early game in what could be a sleepy atmosphere in Cincinnati. I like that under 47.5 if you're going to sprinkle a bet on the early Big 12 game. This one is far more intriguing to me, and I find it as an eliminator. Kansas at West Virginia, two teams that were expected to be dark horse contenders for the Big 12 conference title, and both sitting with 1-2 records on the season. Kansas coming off losses to Illinois and UNLV. West Virginia obviously losing that season opener to Penn State, and then last week dropping one to Pitt in a high-scoring affair there. West Virginia, a 2-point favorite at home against Kansas, and it's put up or shut up time for Lance Leipold and the Jayhawks. They're reeling after 2 straight losses going into what will be a tough environment, even though it's a noon kick in Morgantown. This will be a juiced-up crowd, and that's a tough place to go win if you're Kansas. I love this Kansas quarterback, Jalen Daniels. I like the offense, but so far, the disorganization in the offensive play has shown me that KU is really, really missing offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki, who ended up going to Penn State in the offseason. So I don't think Kansas has figured it out yet. I think they probably will later in the season, but I think this is a really tough spot for KU. Give me West Virginia -2 in this game. 2-point favorite at home in Morgantown. Iowa State, one of the few teams in the conference stepping out of conference today because they've only played 2 games. And Iowa State coming off that very, very nice win in the Cy-Hawk game in Iowa City against the Hawkeyes right there. And now they're ranked number 20 in the AP poll. Impressive start to the season for Iowa State. Love what they're doing on offense. Love what they're doing on defense. I think they are a tough out for any team and are currently a 21-point home favorite against Arkansas State. Look, I like the under in this game simply because I really like what Iowa State's defense has shown so far. I think if you get into a 4-quarter game with the Hawkeyes, you have to be dialed into your keys from a defensive standpoint. And I think they were in that game. I think even though Iowa's offense is improved, Iowa State made that a 4-quarter game, brought that to all 60 minutes, and ended up winning a road game in a game that they traditionally have not had a lot of success with. Arkansas State, they're typically a pretty good group of 5 program coming into this game at 2-1, but Iowa State is a 21-point favorite in this game. I expect no issues for the Cyclones in this one, and I expect a lot of motivation as well for the Cyclones. I think they cover the 21 points, and I would maybe look at that under 51.5. I know I've been a little too heavy on the unders so far this week, but I would look at that under 51.5 because I really like this Iowa State defense right now. This is a fun one. Arizona State and Texas Tech. ASU came off and survived a tough game at Texas State in San Marcos last week on a Thursday night. Now they have had 9 days to prep for this one. They came back home to Tempe, got everything good. May not be 100% healthy in the running back room, but they do still have Cam Scatterbo, which is important. Sam Levitt is playing at the top of his game. Texas Tech, though, tough out at home. That's going to be a 2:30 afternoon kick on FS1 in the Central Time Zone, 12:30 here in Arizona. I'm currently in the Valley, so here I've gotten a little bit used to my script writing over at ABC 15 saying in the Valley, but here in Arizona, that kicks off at 12:30. So Texas Tech is currently a 2.5 point favorite. The total is 59.5. I'm going to flip my over-under trend so far in these Big 12 games. I'm going to go over that 59.5. I do like Texas Tech in this game simply because I think the Red Raiders pulled a lot of confidence for what they did offensively last week. 52 points in the first half against North Texas. I Bleav that was a program record. If it wasn't, goodness, I would love to see what beat it for most points in a single half. Very impressive performance in the first half for Texas Tech last week. Kind of coasted to the finish against North Texas. And now they face an ASU team that seems like they're a little bit over their skis right now. I mean, the Mississippi State win was impressive. The Texas Tech win, or the Texas State win, was impressive. Heck, the season opener against Wyoming was impressive. But I think that ASU may be playing a little bit over their caliber right now. And I think that a true road environment at Tech, afternoon, those students have been tailgating a little bit in the hot Texas sun. I think this is a really tough spot for ASU to go and get a win. I would be very surprised if ASU did so. So give me Texas Tech minus 2.5 in this game. ASU takes its first loss of the season. I am going to skip for now Utah and Oklahoma State because I want that to be the final Big 12 game that I pick, because that is certainly the marquee game of the week. But how about the battle for Dallas? The battle for Dallas Fort Worth, TCU and SMU. Now, SMU got off to kind of a rocky start in their season opener against Nevada, and ended up coming back from almost 20 points down to knock off the Wolfpack. Nevada's not a good team this year. They are projected to be one of the worst teams in the Mountain West. Actually, were projected to finish last in the Mountain West. SMU was, I think, a little bit higher projected because of their talent coming into this year. I think they're going to have a rough road in the ACC. I'm not super high on SMU, and they're coming off a loss to BYU, which to me was shocking. Not easy to win against a BYU team, especially if you don't see them year in and year out. But that was a shocking loss, in my opinion. And so they're coming back home with maybe some discouraged lack of confidence against a TCU team that also lost a heartbreaker against UCF. TCU is a 3-point favorite in this game. The over under is 58.5. I think this is going to be one of those classic bonkers rivalry games. Give me all the points in this one. Easy over 58.5. I like TCU in this one, but I have no conviction on who wins this game because I really, frankly, have a lot of distrust in both TCU and SMU right now. I can't wait to watch this game. That is a 2 p.m. Arizona time kickoff on the CW. And that, if you have the CW, which I Bleav it's in 100% of American households, if you have any traditional cable setup, if you have the CW, watch that game because I think it's going to be bonkers. TCU, SMU, over 58.5. Here's an interesting one. Baylor at Colorado. Colorado coming off a nice bounce back win on the road at Colorado State, holding the Rams to single digits in that game. Handy 3-score win for CU. Taking on a Baylor team that we still don't know a lot about, quite frankly. They lost at Utah after going down big early, ended up losing only 23-12. Cam Rising got hurt in that game. Utah kind of let off the gas a little bit. Baylor's offense not necessarily showing up to what Baylor fans probably hoped in that game, but that was a non-conference battle. So this is the first Big 12 game for Baylor and the first Big 12 game for Colorado as well. CU coming into the game as a 2-point favorite is a huge one for both of these teams. An absolutely huge one. Baylor runs the ball a little bit better. Colorado has had trouble stopping the run, especially early on in that Nebraska game. The Huskers really out-physicaled Colorado in that game all the way through. It was a pretty impressive physical performance. If Baylor can run the ball and keep control of this game, it can go into Boulder and pull off a win. But at elevation up there, those students, the primetime kickoff on Fox, it's a 5 p.m. Arizona time kick, 6 p.m. in Boulder. That place is going to be rocking. Going to be a tough place to go into. Colorado a 2-point favorite, mostly because of the home crowd. I will take Colorado -2. And those terrible, awful, horrible, no good students get to be a little bit happy for a Saturday night. Ooh, good for you, Colorado. All right, my personal feelings. I digress. The late game in the Big 12 Conference in Provo, Utah. This one could be kind of interesting now. I didn't expect BYU to beat SMU. They host Kansas State. This could be one of those games at Lavelle Edwards Stadium that turns into the weird Big 12 after dark game. This could be one of those games that turns into, hey, welcome all these new Four Corners schools, even though BYU and Kansas State have both been in the Big 12, but welcome these new Four Corners schools to the Big 12 and see what they bring from a culture standpoint, and that's crazy games in Big 12 after dark. This could be one of those. I don't think it is. I think K-State is the more physical outfit. I think K-State proves that they are the best team in the conference in this game and kind of runs away from BYU. Only a 6.5-point favorite in this game. The over/under is 48.5. I would take KSU with the points, covering that 6.5 points. I would take the over 48.5. I think K-State will be able to move the ball, especially with what Avery Johnson showed last week against Arizona. I think K-State will be able to move the ball very effectively against this BYU team, and I think it's a pretty comfortable win for K-State in Provo. Here's the big one to the Big 12 this week. Utah at Oklahoma State. That is a 1 p.m. Arizona time kickoff on Fox, 3 p.m. in the Central Time Zone. This should be a fun one, especially because the two quarterbacks' combined age between Cam Rising and Alan Bowman is 49 years old. For context, the Bears play the Colts in the NFL, and the combined age between the starting quarterbacks of the Colts and the Bears, Anthony Richardson and Caleb Williams, is 44 years old. That is a 5-year difference. These guys have been in college forever. They've seen a lot of football. Oklahoma State in this game, a 2.5-point favorite, but I expect Cam Rising to play, even with the finger laceration. That's the expectation, that he goes out there and plays. I just think Utah has so many more questions that are answered. And we haven't seen Oklahoma State run the ball as effectively this year with Ollie Gordon. We haven't seen, their defense show a lot. Obviously, that double overtime game against Arkansas was a wild doozy. That Oklahoma State did win, but raised a lot more questions than answers about the Pokes. Utah has been sound so far. They won with a backup quarterback at Utah State last week, which was not super easy to do. Not exactly an impressive performance from the Utes last week, but I think they just have a lot more questions answered at this point. And give me the better of the two quarterbacks. I think Cam Rising is significantly better than Alan Bowman, and so give me Utah on the road. If this was a night game, I may flip to Oklahoma State, but it's not. It's a 3:00 game. Give me Utah on the road, getting a big-time statement win early on in the conference season, and expect the Utes to vault into the top 10 when Arizona goes into Salt Lake City come next week. All right, some other marquee matchups in college football. Let's start off with the Fox Friday night game, 5 o'clock Arizona time, 7 o'clock Central time in Lincoln, Nebraska, a 22 versus 24 matchup. Nebraska versus Illinois, Memorial Stadium in Lincoln. This is actually the first ranked matchup in Lincoln. Crazy to think about, since 2014. This will be a true Big Ten battle, if you will. Both of these run defenses are exceptional. The headliner for Nebraska is the quarterback, Dylan Raiola, the true freshman, off to a really stellar start, about 70% completion percentage, about five or six touchdowns off the top of my head to just one interception. Nebraska laying 7.5 points at home with an over-under of 42.5. That seems super low, but I don't think Illinois is going to be able to move the ball against this Nebraska defense, especially with what we saw Nebraska do against Colorado, up 28-0 at half. They held Northern Iowa to 3 last week. They held UTEP to 7 in the first game. I think Illinois is going to have a really tough time moving the ball. I think Nebraska's offense also leaves a lot to be desired, so look for that possible under 42.5, even though it's a very low over under. But I really like Nebraska to cover here and cover quite comfortably. That home game atmosphere in Memorial Stadium, the crowd is going to be a frenzy for a Friday night. It's one of the first Friday night games. It actually is the very first Friday night game in the regular season outside of Thanksgiving weekend in Memorial Stadium history. So it should be interesting to see how the crowd shows out for that. Here's the thing about Nebraska, and cards on the table, Nebraska grad. I'm a little biased here, but here's the cool thing about this game for Nebraska. If you watch it tomorrow night on Fox, it's the 400th consecutive sellout at Memorial Stadium. That's a streak that will never be touched, will never be broken, and it's currently ongoing. And there's going to be some cool celebrations for that. So if you love college football, if you love great atmospheres on a Friday night, check out that game on Fox. That's 5 p.m. Arizona time. Number 22 Nebraska versus number 24 Illinois. I have Nebraska covering the 7.5-point spread there. Saturday, big noon Fox, Marshall and Ohio State. And I hate to chuckle on this, but it's really kind of a devoid Big Ten slate for most of the day. And so Ohio State gets the big noon slot mostly because they're Ohio State. 39.5-point favorite against Marshall. Don't touch this line with a 10-foot pole. 52.5 over under. I also wouldn't touch that because I think a shutout could certainly be in play here. Just give me Ohio State big over Marshall. Don't touch the line. Don't touch anything like that. Ohio State rolls on big noon kickoff in Columbus. NC State at Clemson could be really interesting because I think NC State is better than what they've shown so far. I am really high on Tennessee, but Tennessee obviously blew NC State out of the water. So I think people are lower on NC State. This is a massive line. NC State is an 18.5-point road dog to Clemson. What has Clemson proven? At all. Other than the fact that they could hang with Georgia defensively for a half of football, they have shown nothing on offense. Cade Klubnik has not proven anything to me as a quarterback. 18.5 points on a noon game in Clemson. If it's a night game, maybe a different story. Maybe that 18.5 looks pretty tempting. Give me NC State plus 18.5 all day. I may even sprinkle a money line bet on this. I think NC State could go into Clemson and win this game, but definitely this is not going to be a 4-score football game or 3 or 4-score football game. This is going to be close, and I think NC State could pull it out. But 18.5 for Clemson, that is a wild line to me. I think NC State covers that fairly easily. Already talked Arkansas State, Iowa State. Penn State at home against Kent State. Easy cover for Penn State. 49. I would take that all day long and twice on Sunday. Here's a big one. The afternoon game on CBS, 12:30 Arizona time. USC at Michigan. And USC, interestingly enough, perhaps overvalued by that early season win over LSU, is a 5-point favorite on the road in the Big House. I actually like Michigan here. And cards on the table, again, I did pick Michigan over Texas in that game a couple of weeks ago. I said, I'm not voting against, or I'm not betting against the reigning national champions. Well, it turns out that Texas was better in every facet of that game. But if you really watched that game closely, it was a bit of a snowball effect for Michigan. It was something where Michigan would move the ball well, and then a mistake would happen. Or Texas would be on their skis in a 3rd down and long, and then Quinn Ewers would make a play. It didn't feel like the margins were as wide as the final score were. It felt like the ball just kept rolling downhill in the second half, a snowball effect, and Texas kind of ran away with the game. But I didn't see that big of a gap, especially in the trenches between Michigan and Texas. So I think Michigan's being a bit undervalued for that Texas loss at home against a team that's clearly better. I think USC's a bit overvalued for that season opening win in Vegas against LSU, especially because I don't think LSU's that good. And so USC laying 5 points going into the Big House in an afternoon game at Michigan. Michigan making a quarterback change, going with Alex Orji. I think that the physicality of this Michigan team and their desire to slow the game down and to chunk this game out, I don't think the interior of this USC defense is good enough yet to handle the physicality of a team like Michigan. And while I like Miller Moss at quarterback, I don't think USC can run the ball that effectively. I don't think USC can be a team that is going to go blow for blow in the run game with Michigan. So I like Miller Moss a lot, but he's going up against Will Campbell and guys in the second level of this Michigan defense that are really just stud defensive backs. I think USC's strengths play directly into Michigan's hands. Give me Michigan on the money line here, even though USC is a 5-point favorite. UCLA at LSU. UCLA looked horrible in a 42-13 loss to Indiana. Give me LSU minus 23.5, even though, as I have previously established, I am still not a fan of LSU or what they're bringing to the table this year, barely escaping South Carolina last week with a win in a game that really the Gamecocks just kind of fumbled right there. Interesting one in the ACC in the middle of the afternoon, Georgia Tech at Louisville. Louisville is, it's gut check time for the Cards there because they have been ranked. They've been kind of just rolling on the ranking all regular season. Georgia Tech with a tough loss on the road at Syracuse early on in just a couple weeks ago, actually. Nice bounce back win at home last week. So Georgia Tech, one of the only teams in the country to have played 4 games. And now they're going into this game at Louisville with the chance to kind of put themselves back in the conversation in the ACC race. Louisville's a 10.5 point favorite in this game. Give me Georgia Tech plus the 10.5. I think this is going to be a dogfight all the way to the end. And if the same Georgia Tech team, physically wise, showed up against Florida State in Dublin, we may see a Yellow Jackets win at Papa John's Stadium, or former Papa John's Stadium. It's now L&N Federal Credit Union Stadium. Boo. In Louisville. I think this is going to be a tight one all the way throughout. All right, already talked about Utah, Oklahoma State. Miami, South Florida, that's an interesting one, and it's our second to last. Yeah, let me double check this. Yeah, our second to last pick of the day. So the 2 night games, 6 p.m. Or 7 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN, 4 p.m. Arizona time. We got Miami and South Florida, and this should show us what the Miami Hurricanes are this year. We know what Cam Ward is. We know Miami had an electric performance in the season opener at Florida that put Billy Napier on the hottest of seats as Florida's head coach. But now we need to see if Miami's defense can step up against a team that took Alabama all the way into the fourth quarter in Tuscaloosa. This South Florida team is a team that's going to, be up for a fight a little bit. And Miami doesn't have to travel very far, so I think that's an advantage for the Hurricanes. But, this is a team that this is an opponent that's going to test you, and that's going to make this a 4-quarter game. Miami, a 17-point favorite. Here's what I'm looking at, though. The over-under is 65.5, and I think that Miami's defense is a little bit better than allowing that kind of number. So I would really heavily look at under 65.5 in that game. I think Miami wins. I don't know if I would touch the 17 just because I think South Florida is a little salty, but I think Miami wins that game fairly comfortably, and I think that that under 65.5 is the play here. And our final pick of the week, Tennessee at Oklahoma. This is one of the most fun games early on in the college football season. Tennessee, a 7.5 favorite, according to ESPN Bet, in Norman. This will be really interesting because Tennessee right now has the number 1 offense in the country, led by their redshirt freshman quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. That's right, Nico Iamaleava. In case your friends ask, that's how you pronounce it. I looked it up. Trust me, we'll further reference him as just Nico from now on. I think he's an exceptional quarterback, but I think Oklahoma has shown a lot on defense so far. My problem with Oklahoma in this game and coming into this game is they haven't seen an offense that is as explosive as Tennessee so far. And Oklahoma has shown major cracks in the foundation on offense. Jackson Arnold, good quarterback, but we saw him in the Alamo Bowl last year when they played the U of A, that there are major cracks in the foundation when it comes to exactly how to manage a game in the second half. They haven't done that so far very well this year. They didn't do it at home against Houston. They didn't manage the second half of the game against Tulane. Oklahoma's still undefeated, but Tennessee has looked far more impressive. Give me Tennessee and the points, and we have gone an hour with this podcast. I got to do them more frequently throughout the week, just kind of still adjusting to this new work schedule, doing overnights over at ABC 15 here in Phoenix. But just love talking about college football. And that's what we do here on the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Real quick note on our Bear Down Rundown, telling you what else you need to know about Arizona athletics. Nice to see Christian Coloco, the former Arizona Wildcats center, signing with the Los Angeles Lakers. Had a health scare that forced him out of the game for a little bit, but just earlier this week, signing with the Los Angeles Lakers. So Christian Coloco back in the NBA, which is great to see. All right, we'll have a podcast coming up early on next week as we progress Arizona to Utah week and perhaps the most pivotal game remaining in the Wildcats regular season. Quick reminder to please subscribe to the show, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, please, at Matt_Reynoldson. And you can just give a play on every single show we have here on the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy college football. Let me know what you're doing with your bye week in the comments, and we'll talk to you next week. Have a great weekend.